How's it going, everybody? I am back in Fallout 4, and I am at Nordhagen Beach again, and this is actually one of the bigger builds that I'm going to be doing here. Yeah, it's a very large airplane that I'm going to make into basically a two-story home. I'm going to use Quappa to fill in some pieces and stuff like that. Basically, the bottom floor is going to be just like a couple beds and some storage and stuff. Upstairs, there's going to be like a couple different things. It's a very, very scrappy build, and I try to like repair it slightly so that it won't have so many holes and stuff in it on the top and on the side. But either way, it's intended to look very scrappy. I wanted to get a couple of these junk walls that have some slight angles and stuff that I can use to kind of put those on the side to look like they're kind of holding it up off the ground, because it is like kind of floating on this end, and I needed to have a reason why it was able to hold up like that. But yeah, it's a very, very scrappy build. I'm actually really proud of this one. It reminds me of whenever I did the one of the original builds that people have said that I should do on video, like showing how I did it, was the original airplane guard post. It's actually one of the most viewed videos on the channel, I'm pretty sure. But a lot of people had commented when I had done that and said that that's a thing that I should have done, like a video like this, like tutorial style, showing myself build. And I had never actually done that. But that video is one of the more viewed videos on the channel. And it's a very similar build to this. This is just not a guard post. It's a house. It's slightly a guard post. There is a place for a guard. But it's not the intention of the build. I didn't actually intend on doing that at all until very late into the build. But right here, I'm just trying to make it look like it's kind of held up by these. I wanted to do something like this with this angled bit. I wanted to use that as if it was like a support as well. And I think I do place it. I get rid of this eventually. I really don't like the way that it looks. I thought it looked really bad. So that's not there for very long. I do delete that. And yeah, I go back to these pieces from the supports and post mod by Toys Out of the Pram, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember anymore. It's been so long since I've actually looked at the mods that I use. But a majority of my mods are by Toys Out of the Pram. But I just go ahead and get some of these like random support beams and stuff like that to place kind of scattered around here, leaning up against the airplane, just to make it look real scrappy and look like it's being held up by these wooden beams. And I think that it does actually look pretty cool. It makes it adds to the actual full build, I think. But I just kind of am trying to find pillars and stuff that I can kind of place scattered throughout here to look like they're kind of leaning up on the actual airplane to hold it up a little bit, make it a little sturdier so it doesn't ever rock or anything like that. But right here, another pillar on this side. I like that pillar a lot. It's very scrappy looking. You can kind of put it on any sort of roof or anything that's being held up, and it makes it look really scrappy, and it adds a nice look to something. I've used it on a bunch of builds, and it does add a nice effect. And then I go back to this side. This side doesn't have nearly as many supports on it, so that's why I went back to this side, and I was going to add this leaning on something. So that looks nice. I think I get rid of that angled shack wall or junk wall here in a minute. But I just wanted this to look real scrappy, and I think that I did a pretty good job about it, making it look as scrappy as possible. And even after this build, there was a couple things that I added to the settlement that I think make it look even better. Just the things around it, or just like smaller decorations that weren't added during this build. But more supports. I think I add another metal beam. That one right there, yeah. I just wanted there to be a few of those things there to make it look even more supported. And then I just was looking around through a couple of these things. Didn't really find anything else that I thought fit well. And then I started messing around. After I finished like the outside, I started messing around with the interior of the actual build. Right there, a minute ago, I was just messing around with ladders, thinking about how I could provide an interesting way for people to get into this structure. And the first thing I do is I add a shack bridge just so that I have at least something to go off of up here. And then really I just need to start filling in as much of this area as I possibly can and flatten it off without it looking too weird, you know. I want it to look like they built around the structure and built onto it and stuff, but I don't want anything to look out of place or like just, I don't want too much clipping or anything like that, obviously. I don't want anything to look like it's floating because of the angle of the actual airplane floor up here. So I went ahead and I started actually just placing down some actual floor pieces. And you can see that some of these have some different angles that don't look that great. It's kind of a little bit off. I probably could have straightened it out a little bit more somehow. But I just didn't mess with it. I just left it kind of at this different angle, and I couldn't get this to place. I was going to use that as a floor in here as well, just to have something different. But I just went ahead and I started settling on some easier to place things, and I went ahead and got some of these pallets, and I was placing them down, trying to get them to be flat underneath the actual floor that we have placed. And you can see that it fills in nicely. It makes it look like it's leaning on something, like that floor is actually on those pallets. And then to break up between the regular pallets that were placing down, I got this bigger one, and I was going to use it down here to fill in a little bit extra space. And then I can start using just some more normal looking things. Thought about using that someplace, wasn't sure how I would, so I just didn't mess with it yet. I really wanted to use that pier shack, or the pier piece for some reason. I looked at it a couple times while I was in here. But I went back to the shack bridge. Shack bridge pieces are really good to like fill in like gaps and stuff in a settlement or whatever, or a floor or whatever, because you can just kind of go over them with some plywood, and it changes the texture enough so that you can't tell that you're using the same piece more than once. But what I do end up doing is I get some plywood over here, because as long as there's some pieces underneath all this plywood, it should be fine. I just have to make sure that it gets all the way on the ledge so that you can't really see like a huge gap between it all. Between the floor and the pallets below. And so I just go ahead and I mess with a little bit more of this stuff. Grab another shack bridge to place it on the other side as well. And since it's mixing in a little bit with the other shack bridge and then the floor, it doesn't look too repetitive. I really don't like that floor in the middle right now with it being like that. Just looks so different compared to like everything else. So I went ahead and I replaced that, and I realized in doing that that I had messed up and I had accidentally deleted the first piece of plywood, or well, the floor that the plywood was sitting on, so then it clipped everything else to be lower. And then in getting it to be even again, I ended up moving that first pallet up a little bit, and then to fill in the gap behind it, I just used another scaffolding floor because it has a different texture than all the other floor pieces that I had used. It's right there. It actually worked out pretty well. Then on to the bottom floor. Down here, I wasn't sure how I was going to do this because there's not a lot of room to begin with. And just the way the walls are is kind of wonky down here is all. So it's a little bit harder. But and then also, it's kind of hard to close up the back part of this. I don't know why I wanted to use a carpeted floor. It doesn't work. And then, really, I was looking for some different floors here that I could use. I ended up going with some of those floors right there because they fit. And then I picked that last floor just because it's different than everything else I've used in this settlement so far. I hadn't actually used any of the warehouse tab stuff. So then I got rid of that piece right there because I realized the floor is floating, so I needed something that was a little bit taller. So I just went ahead and got a shack bridge and I placed it. It's slightly out, but that's fine. The reason I did that was because I'm going to have a door frame here. I was going to use the junk fence door frame because I don't want the regular wood door frames or anything like that. I want the one with the supports on the sides. That way it looks scrappy. I slightly lift it off so that it is pretty even with the floor of the bridge. Not like floating up in the air or anything. And then obviously a way to get up on that shack bridge is with a set of stairs right out front and then a piece of plywood to fill in. Right between the gaps, so it ends up working out pretty well. And then really my main problem was I didn't know how to close off this back area, so right here you see I try to get it to snap. It doesn't lift all the way to where I want it to. And regardless, I knew that I was going to end up having like a bunch of dirt kind of floating through, so I just went and got some junk walls. I got this piece because the color matches the actual airplane the best. And then I just was like, I'll put it at an angle. At first I was going to do it straight. I end up moving it at an angle because I think that I can hide the I think I can hide the dirt, but I really can't. And then also I wanted to use these kind of angled pieces to fill in the sides. So right here, I just wanted to have this kind of lean into that rounded metal piece right there. But it doesn't really cut off nearly as much as I want. I wish that I could have filled it better. I wish that I had done what I do to the front of the plane to this back end, because it would just look better. And you guys will see what I end up doing with that here in a little bit. But now that that's closed off, I could move on to the front end of it. Oh, I moved on to the top. So, like I said, I wanted to clean up the roof of this. I wanted to close it off a little bit better. So I went through with custom vanilla assets, found like all the different areas that had holes in the top of the airplane, and then I just grabbed like an amount that I thought I may need to clean up the roof and close it off so that there's not just a bunch of massive holes in the roof. At least I didn't really care about the really small ones. I just was worried about these huge panels missing on the top, so I grabbed 2 for over here on this front half, and they are slightly angled, and from the outside they look kind of weird a little bit. They just kind of look like they're off, and then on the inside they're clipping through, but I really don't care all that much about that on this one. I think that it ends up looking actually pretty cool, like they repaired the roof of the airplane, so I actually like the way that it turned out. And then over here there's a much bigger gap, and I ended up doing something different with this anyway than what I intended to do with all 4 of these. So you can see that I don't actually place that down. And what I end up doing is just using wooden beams to fill in that gap. And then after I did that, I filled in this edge over here with some of the rounded walls and everything like that. Bunch of different pieces. I didn't show that, but a lot of just filling in. I left like a window, just a bunch of half walls, a regular wall in the middle, and then the 2 rounded walls on the corners. And then originally I wanted to have like a second floor even up here, but I realized that I can't actually fit up here. These pieces in the middle don't work for me. I hit those when you're trying to walk through. So what I end up doing is using this piece right here, filling in over here on this side. And because it's kind of just a very small area, what I end up doing is adding some beds up there, a chair, and then like a very small, it doesn't work obviously if I stand there, but it's just the idea that I'm going to have a staircase that leads up there, and then people are going to be able to sleep up there and everything like that. And then to fill the gap, because there's a gap between the scaffolding pieces, I really could have filled moved one of the scaffolding quarter floor pieces over a little bit. It probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But yeah, you see that staircase is better right in the middle right there, but I just use a second one and I try to line it up evenly, and so that the floor lines up with the stairs, so it's really easy to walk up. And then here's the finished tour. I added scaffolding. That changes, by the way. That is not what it looks like. That was a very dumb looking thing. I intended to build farther towards the middle of the settlement, and I was like, that'll be part of something at some point. I changed that. That's a terrible looking scaffolding. But I added a billboard on the front with a turned over car. That's part of the junk wall pack. And then Still hadn't made a walkway down here. I wasn't sure how I was going to do that at this time. Just made it a little scrappier. And then on this front end, that also changes. Like I said, I end up using Quappa to turn over some of those rotated pieces, or rounded half wall pieces, and fill in those gaps, and it looks a lot better after this. But either way, I still think that this is a pretty cool looking thing, and I really hope that you guys like it. I know that a lot of people wanted to see me do something like this for a while, not necessarily as a house, but just an airplane build for a while. I wanted to use a bigger piece, but I can't actually get them to place. I would totally use a bigger airplane if I could get them to actually place. That would be awesome, but I can't. And like I said, this totally works as a guard post. I do something different with this later as well, but the walkway up, I think that looks cool as like a way to fill in the roof, and it doesn't look like that weird and awful. It looks like a ramp up the airplane, which I think works. But yeah, a nice view over the settlement so far, and then a walk back down, and then we go into the house, or the top floor or whatever. But yeah, I really like this build. But hopefully you guys do as well. Things coming up. This is the 4th build at this settlement. I think I've got one more, and then I got like a little unfinished tour, and then we're going to be moving on to the National Park Center in Far Harbor. And then I might start doing some more build anywhere mod workshops. No Respawn started like a little series on his channel, like Fallout 4 Outpost, where he uses Build Anywhere to build small little like single player shacks, and I might be doing something similar. I mentioned it in the comments of his video, and he hearted the comment, but I assume that that's like semi approval to like use a similar concept, but really it's just getting ready for Fallout 76 and the different style we're going to need for that game. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this build. Let me know what you guys think of that idea. If you guys haven't seen that video, No Respawns, you should check that out. It's pretty awesome. But thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.